AI doesn't run on code, it runs on cables. Thin fiber optic cables resting silently on the seafloor, carrying more than 95% of everything the internet sends and receives across the globe. And whoever controls those cables controls the world's information. For years, India consumed roughly 20% of global internet traffic, but hosted just 3% of the world's subsea cable landings. A massive imbalance that left the country and much of the global south dependent on bottlenecks it didn't own, couldn't fully control, and couldn't protect. That just changed. In October 2025, Google announced the single largest tech infrastructure investment in India's history, $15 billion. A full-scale AI hub in the port city of Visakhapatnam, complete with a gigawatt-scale data center campus, new subsea cable routes connecting 4 continents, and a vision that goes far beyond cloud computing. What was actually announced? On October 14th, 2025, at the India AI Impact Summit in New Delhi, Google Cloud CEO Thomas Kurian stepped up to the microphone and made a statement that sent shockwaves through the infrastructure world. Google would invest $15 billion over 5 years, from 2026 to 2030, to build India's first full-stack AI hub, located in the southern port city of Visakhapatnam, known locally as Vizag. This is Google's largest ever investment in any single country. Now let's be clear about what full-stack actually means here, because this phrase carries a lot of weight. Most data center announcements involve a building, some servers, and a power hookup. This is different. Google's hub in Vizag will combine 5 distinct infrastructure layers in one location. First, a hyperscale data center campus built to the same engineering standards that run Google Search, YouTube, and Gmail globally. 3 separate campuses across Visakhapatnam, developed with partners Adani Connex and Bharti Airtel. Second, gigawatt-scale compute capacity. For context, 1 gigawatt of continuous power could supply electricity to roughly 700,000 to 800,000 American homes. This hub will consume that level of power just to run its AI processing. Third, custom tensor processing units, or TPUs. These are Google's own AI chips, designed specifically to train and run large AI models. India will now have direct, local access to this hardware. That matters more than it sounds, because until now, much of the global south has had to route AI workloads through data centers thousands of miles away. Fourth, a new international subsea gateway in Visakhapatnam, a cable landing station, the physical port where deep-sea cables come ashore and connect to land networks. Bharti Airtel will build and operate this station. And fifth, a brand new fiber optic corridor called America-India Connect, linking Vizag to Singapore, South Africa, Australia, and through combination routes to Europe and the American east and west coasts. When Thomas Kurian said, paraphrasing carefully, that this hub will serve not just India, but from India, Asia, and other parts of the world, he wasn't speaking in marketing language. He was describing a fundamental rerouting of how the world's AI traffic flows. Why Visakhapatnam? The strategic logic. If you've never heard of Visakhapatnam before, you're not alone. It's not Mumbai, it's not Bangalore. It doesn't carry the global name recognition of Hyderabad. So why here? Why did Google choose a port city on India's eastern coastline for its most significant global infrastructure bet? The answer comes down to 3 things: geography, geopolitics, and timing. Geographically, Vizag sits on India's eastern coast, facing the Bay of Bengal. That coastline gives it something Mumbai and Chennai, India's traditional cable landing hubs, cannot offer: direct access to routes heading towards Southeast Asia, Australia, and the South Pacific. India's existing cable infrastructure is heavily concentrated on its western coast. Mumbai and Chennai handle the bulk of international traffic, mostly routing through the Red Sea toward Europe and the Middle East. That made strategic sense when most of India's digital economy was trading with Europe. But the world is shifting. Southeast Asia is growing at an extraordinary pace. Australia is becoming a critical node in the Indo-Pacific digital network, and East Africa is emerging as a significant and fast-growing consumer of digital services. The eastern coast is simply closer to all of it. India's IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw put it bluntly at the summit. Singapore, he said, the traditional hub for Southeast Asian cable routes, is all choked. The infrastructure is maxed out. New capacity needs to land somewhere else. Visakhapatnam has deep water port access, room to build at scale, a rapidly growing tech ecosystem, and the full political backing of Andhra Pradesh's Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu, a key political ally of Prime Minister Modi, who has actively courted global tech investment for years. This is not Andhra Pradesh's first encounter with global tech investment. Oracle and Microsoft both established major hubs in Hyderabad when it was the state's capital. But this is a fundamentally different scale. This is not an office building or a regional data center. This is a continental gateway. And the timing? That's where it gets interesting. The cables under the ocean. Before we can understand what Google is really doing here, we need to talk about submarine cables and why they matter in ways most people have never considered. Currently, at the bottom of the ocean, there are more than 600 active and planned commercial fiber optic cables stretching across the seafloor. End to end, they total over 1.48 million kilometers, enough to circle the Earth more than 37 times. These cables carry more than 95% of all international internet traffic. That means virtually every international email, financial transaction, military communication, streaming video, and AI model output crosses the ocean through one of these cables. Satellites get a lot of press, but they carry only a small fraction of global cross-border traffic. The internet runs on cables. It always has. Each cable is surprisingly slim, about the diameter of a garden hose in deep water, though reinforced near shores where it's more vulnerable. Inside are hair-thin glass fibers, carrying pulses of laser light at nearly the speed of light. The data traveling through them doesn't just flow, it routes. Like highways, some paths are faster, more direct, and more reliable than others. And like highways, some paths pass through strategic choke points. The Red Sea Corridor, the South China Sea, the Strait of Malacca. These are the critical junctions of the global internet, the places where cables from multiple continents converge, pass through narrow maritime corridors, and become vulnerable. On February 24th, 2024, 3 major cables in the Red Sea, the AAE-1, EIG, and CECOM systems were severed, most likely when a ship struck by Houthi militants sank and its anchor dragged across the seafloor. The result? 25% of internet traffic between Asia, Europe, and the Middle East was disrupted. Repairs took weeks, and the Red Sea has remained a zone of ongoing cable vulnerability ever since. In the Baltic Sea, cables between European countries have been cut multiple times, including a Sweden-Lithuania cable and a Germany-Finland cable in late 2024, under circumstances that raise serious concerns about deliberate sabotage tied to Russian vessels. The world is waking up to something infrastructure strategists have known for a long time. Submarine cables are not neutral. They are geopolitical assets. The United States government has quietly blocked multiple subsea cable projects that propose landing points in Hong Kong or routing through Chinese-controlled infrastructure, not for commercial reasons, but for national security ones. Washington's interagency task force, known as Team Telecom, has the authority to review and reject cable projects based on who owns them and where they land. China, meanwhile, has been building its own parallel cable networks, its own data center ecosystems, and its own digital corridors through the Belt and Road Initiative. The global internet is physically fragmenting along geopolitical lines, and India, sitting at the intersection of the Indian Ocean, the Bay of Bengal, and the routes leading to the South China Sea, is sitting on potentially the most strategically valuable piece of oceanfront real estate in the world. America-India Connect, the new digital highway. Here's where this story gets genuinely remarkable. Google's investment in Visag isn't just about building one cable. It's about building a network of networks, a series of interconnected routes that effectively create a new geography for the world's internet traffic. Google calls it America-India Connect. The project creates 3 new direct subsea paths. The first connects Visakhapatnam directly to Singapore. Combine that with Google's existing Bosun and Tabua cable systems, and you get a South Pacific corridor that links the American West Coast all the way through Australia to India's East Coast. A full trans-Pacific route that bypasses the South China Sea entirely. The second connects Visag directly to South Africa. Combine that with the Equiano and Novum cable systems, and you get a complete route from the American East Coast, around Africa, up through the Indian Ocean, directly to Visakhapatnam. The third is a direct fiber connection between Mumbai and Western Australia, a South Pacific route that offers redundancy for the existing corridors through the Red Sea. 4 total strategic fiber optic routes, multiple continents, and critically, multiple alternative paths that don't depend on traditional choke points. Think about what this means in practical terms. Right now, if you're a business in Southeast Asia needing to route AI model requests to a data center, your traffic almost certainly passes through Singapore. Singapore is excellent, but it's at capacity. It's a bottleneck. And its routes pass through maritime corridors that carry real geopolitical risk. With Google's new infrastructure, that same request could route through Visakhapatnam instead. Direct, lower latency, more capacity, and no Red Sea choke point. India's IT minister went even further at the summit. He directly urged companies to consider the Andaman Islands, India's territory deep in the Bay of Bengal, as the next global cable hub. His reasoning was explicit. Singapore is congested, and India's geography gives it natural advantages that no other country in the region can match. The question is no longer whether India becomes a global cable hub. The question is how fast and on whose terms. The bigger picture: AI, power, and the global south. There's a deeper geopolitical story underneath all of this, and it's one that rarely gets told clearly. For the past years, the world's digital infrastructure has been concentrating in 2 places: the United States and China. American companies like Google, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft own and operate much of the Western world's digital backbone. Chinese companies, Huawei, China Telecom, HMN Technologies, have been aggressively building infrastructure across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. 2 digital ecosystems, 2 sets of cables, 2 standards, 2 supply chains. And the rest of the world, Latin America, Africa, South and Southeast Asia, has largely been recipients of infrastructure, not architects of it. India is positioning itself as something different. Not a part of the US digital bloc, not a part of China's. Something in between, what some analysts have started to call a digital non-aligned movement. The phrase echoes history. In the 1950s and 60s, India's first Prime Minister Nehru led the original non-aligned movement, refusing to join either the American or Soviet blocs during the Cold War. It was a controversial strategy, but it gave India strategic flexibility that pure alignment would not have. Today, India is attempting something structurally similar in the digital domain. India has welcomed investment from American tech companies. Google, Microsoft, and Amazon have collectively pledged over $100 billion in Indian infrastructure in just the past few years. At the same time, India has maintained independent trade relationships with Russia, Gulf states, and Southeast Asian nations that American foreign policy would sometimes prefer it didn't. India is not anti-American, but it is explicitly, deliberately, multi-aligned. And for the global south, nations across Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America that have historically been forced to route through infrastructure they don't own, an India-anchored digital corridor represents something genuinely new. The numbers back the ambition. Stanford University's 2025 Global AI Vibrancy Tool now ranks India 3rd globally, behind only the United States and China, having overtaken the UK. India leads the world in AI talent hiring growth at 33.4% year-on-year. And on GitHub, India is the 2nd largest contributor to AI projects globally, accounting for 19.9% of all contributions, behind only the US at 23.4%. India has the talent, it has the regulatory frameworks, it has the geopolitical independence. What it lacked was the physical infrastructure. That's what Visakhapatnam changes. Risks and real challenges. What could go wrong? No $15 billion infrastructure story is complete without an honest accounting of the risks. And there are real ones here. The first is energy. 1 gigawatt of continuous compute capacity requires an enormous, uninterrupted supply of electricity. Google has committed to building new transmission lines, clean energy generation, and energy storage systems in Andhra Pradesh as part of the deal. That's the right commitment, but it's also a massive undertaking in a state where grid reliability, while improving, still faces real challenges in consistency and capacity. Building a hyperscale AI facility that cannot tolerate power interruptions in a region where grid infrastructure is still scaling up is a genuine engineering challenge. Google's track record is strong. The company operates some of the most energy-efficient data centers in the world, but the local grid will need to develop alongside the hub itself. This is not a small ask. The second is water. AI data centers generate enormous heat. Cooling that heat requires water, lots of it. A single hyperscale data center can consume millions of liters of water per day. In regions already facing water stress, that creates a real tension between digital infrastructure growth and local community needs. Google has not yet published detailed water management plans for Visakhapatnam. This is a question that deserves a direct and public answer before construction scales up. The third is cybersecurity. A cable landing station in Vizag connecting 4 continents would become, essentially, one of the most strategically sensitive pieces of physical infrastructure on Earth. The security of that facility, against physical sabotage, cyber attack, state-sponsored espionage, and supply chain compromise, will require unprecedented coordination between Google, the Indian government, and allied intelligence services. India's framework for protecting critical digital infrastructure is still developing. Bringing it up to the standard required by infrastructure of this sensitivity will be a significant and ongoing challenge. And the fourth is local infrastructure readiness. Visakhapatnam is growing fast, but building a global AI hub requires roads, fiber backhaul networks, a trained technical workforce, and a regulatory environment that can move at technology speed. Andhra Pradesh's government has been aggressive and effective in attracting investment. But the scale of what Google is proposing dwarfs anything the state has handled before. The political commitment is clear. The real test will be execution, year after year, through 2030. The $100 billion bet on India. One more thing needs to be said, because this story is even bigger than one company. Google's $15 billion announcement didn't happen in isolation. In a single 24-hour window in late 2025, Microsoft and Amazon announced combined pledges of over $50 billion toward India's cloud and AI infrastructure. Amazon committed over $35 billion on top of the $40 billion it had already invested in the country. Microsoft followed with an aggressive expansion of its Azure data center footprint. OpenAI and Perplexity both began offering their AI tools for free to millions of Indian users, not as charity, but as strategic market seeding for the world's most populous country and one of its fastest growing digital economies. What you're watching in real time is the world's largest tech companies collectively deciding that India is not simply a market to serve, it is a platform to build on. The question that should be in your mind right now is this: who actually benefits? India's government says this will accelerate the country's AI mission, create high-value jobs, and position Indian developers and businesses at the frontier of the AI economy. Google says the hub will generate at least $15 billion in American GDP as well, through the US talent, R&D, and resources involved in building and operating it. Both statements can be true at the same time. But the more important question, the one that will define the next decade, is simpler. Will India capture the strategic value of this infrastructure, or will it end up as a well-located server farm for Silicon Valley's ambitions? That answer isn't written yet. Step back for a moment and look at the full picture. The AI race is often described in terms of algorithms, models, parameters, and benchmarks. GPT versus Gemini, open source versus closed, American AI versus Chinese AI. But underneath all of that debate, underneath the software, the models, the interfaces, the startups, there is a physical layer, and it is more important than almost anyone publicly acknowledges. Power grids, cooling systems, server racks, and most of all, fiber optic cables, resting in darkness at the bottom of the ocean, carrying the instructions that make AI run. The AI era will not be decided only by who writes the best code. It will be decided by who controls the compute, who owns the cables, who decides where traffic routes, who builds the landing stations, who gets to sit at the center of the map. What Google is building in Visakhapatnam is not just a data center, it is the seed of a new digital geography, one where India sits at the center of a web connecting the global south to the global north, Southeast Asia to East Africa, the Indo-Pacific to the Atlantic. That shift doesn't happen overnight, The cables take years to lay. The data centers take years to build. The regulatory frameworks take years to mature. But the strategic decision has been made. The $15 billion check has been written. The cables are being designed. And the map is already changing. Which brings us to the question that no one can yet answer. India is attracting the infrastructure, but infrastructure is not sovereignty. The Gulf states built ports and financial centers on foreign investment, and some of them captured genuine strategic leverage. Others became dependent on the very companies and countries they thought they were courting. Will India be the architect of the AI era's digital geography? Or will it be its most valuable piece of terrain? The cables are being laid right now. The answer is being written in fiber and silicon on the floor of the Bay of Bengal. And whoever controls that answer controls the infrastructure that powers the world's intelligence. If this video changed how you think about AI infrastructure, share it. Most people have no idea this story is unfolding. Watch next, Thailand's land bridge, the infrastructure that could bypass the Strait of Malacca.